Hello, everyone. My name is Jared. I'm one of the team members with Podcast Movement. And of course, today we're joined by Krystal Proffitt from the Proffitt Podcast and Proffitt Media. So today's topic is 20 ways to repurpose one podcast episode. I'm very passionate about this topic. I love it. And Krystal is got a lot of great information and insights to share. And we've already got questions in the chat, which is so so revealing of this topic. So, Krystal, first of all, thank you for being a part of this. And as we jump in here, for people that aren't familiar with you and what you're up to, can you catch them up, and then we'll just dive right into the presentation.
Yes. Well, thank you, Jared, and the rest of the team for having me. I'm super excited to talk about just repurposing content because along my journey, it's been ups and downs and all over a roller coaster of just my content journey. And repurposing has been something really key for that. So I am a podcaster. I am the host of the Proffitt Podcast, which is a weekly show, as well as the Potty Report, which is a daily podcast. We're actually going to use these in a few examples here in a little bit, but I am so excited to help content creators create their content with confidence. So, and let me know in the chat, like where everybody is from. I'm so excited that y'all are here. Yeah. And thank you, Jared and the team. You can connect with me at krystalproffitt.com. That's the best place. But I am just excited to dive in. We have a lot to cover, so we're just going to get started. So welcome to today's training, all about 20 ways to repurpose one podcast episode. I hope that this training inspires you, encourages you, and it doesn't overwhelm you, because maybe you're already thinking, oh my gosh, 20 ways? Like, hang on, time out. I thought we were supposed to focus on just showing up and being consistent. Well, these are some things that are going to inspire you and hopefully encourage you to do a little extra planning ahead and thinking, how can I market my content and get the most impact possible by creating one really awesome piece of content and using it in many different ways. So before we get started, I wanted to share with you where this idea of really talking about repurposing content came from, because I'm a little embarrassed. I'm going to share with y'all a little, I guess, guilty pleasure, if you want to call it that, but I'm obsessed with the home edit. So if you don't know what this is a home organization team, and they have done some incredible things. I actually binge watched their entire show on Netflix over the holiday season in 2020. And ever since then, like if you see people's bookshelves where all their books are in rainbow colors, all those things, that's where this inspiration came from. Because whenever I first started creating content, I would see people that would share their content calendars, and they were so gorgeous. They were organized, they were color coded. They would say, this is for social media, and this is for my podcast, and this is for this. And I was jealous. I was like, man, I wish I was that organized, and I wasn't. So it's taken me a while to get there, but today I'm excited to share with you, because now this is Asana. If you've never heard of this, there are a lot of project management tools. I use this one for free. I'm not an affiliate for them. There's no affiliate like things being shared here, but I cannot stop talking about how Asana has changed my life, especially when it comes to content repurposing. There's other tools like Trello and Monday.com and ClickUp and so many other really cool project management tools. This is what I use. And here is actually like a little sneak peek of what my 2022 content calendar looks like. You can see I have everything categorized by, if it's a podcast episode, it's a YouTube video, if it's something for my Facebook group or whatever, everything goes in here. Again, this might seem a little intimidating or overwhelming. We are baby stepping into what this could possibly look like. So I want you to think of this as aspirational. What can I do in the future to make creating my content that much easier? Because it's going to help you do it with confidence. Okay. This is what we're going for today, is confidence when it comes to creating your content. So I want you to walk away from this training today with an understanding of how content repurposing works and a fresh plan for your content creation processes. But I do have a disclaimer that we need to cover. Like, I already touched on this, but this training was not intended for you to implement everything you see here tomorrow. So if you feel overwhelmed and you're just like, oh my gosh, like this is too much. Like Krystal just threw all this information at me. Don't worry, that's not what this training is here for. You can go back and watch the replay as many times as you need. And I'm actually going to have a link for you to get all the slides for this presentation. That way you can go back, take notes, and really figure out how you can use these strategies for your content. Okay, so I just wanted to throw this out here before we get started. So again, we can do this with confidence and not overwhelm yourself with all these new ideas. All right, so questions. If you, I can see the chat is already going. Hello, I see friends from Maple Valley, Washington. Hi from Madison, Plymouth, Massachusetts. I see so many people in the chat. If you have questions, make sure you put a Q in front, and Jared and his team are make sure that we grab those and we answer them all at the end, because we are going to have a chance for you to answer your or get your questions answered live. So please don't hesitate. Don't hold your questions back. Go ahead and put them in the chat and we'll flag them and make sure we get to those at the end. So here's a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. First, we're going to cover what is repurposing, why is it important. We're going to start with the end in mind, and then we're going to go into the 20 ways that you can actually repurpose your content. And then, of course, the Q&A at the end. So give me a I'm ready in the chat if you are excited for today's presentation. Just type in I'm ready, because I am so excited to share with you all the things that I have learned between creating podcasts and all types of other content from one piece of content. Oh, it fires me up. It fires me up so much. Okay. So what is repurposing? Well, in the simplest forms, right? You're wondering, well, what does that actually mean? It means you're using one piece of content in more than one way, right? Maybe you have a podcast episode and you think, well, it was just intended to be a podcast episode. I want you to expand your mind and think about your content in a totally different way, because that will help you implement some of the things that we're talking about. So when you think about repurposing, I want you to have in mind that it's also not just about the final product. We're creating podcast episodes. It's an audio file, but it's not just all about that audio file. Think about the research that you did for it, whether you're interviewing a guest and you're like looking up all their information, or you're exploring a topic that you've never discovered before. You're probably going to look up some information about it or do some digging in your own experience, knowledge, like all the things that you have that you know about this topic. So don't think of it as just, oh, I have this audio file. How can I use it? I'm actually taking it a step back and looking at all the planning and the processes and workflows that you have before you even get to your final podcast product. Okay. So let's talk about why repurposing is important. So the idea is to create something once and get the most mileage out of it so that you can stay in front of your audience. And here's the trick: without being annoying. Oh my gosh. Give me a yes in the comments if you have ever felt like you're annoying your audience by saying, there's a new podcast out. You should go listen. Please go listen to my podcast. There's a new one out. I really need you. Go check it out. It's on Apple. It's on Google. It's on Spotify. Give me a yes in the comments if you've ever felt that way. You're like, I think I'm just annoying my people. This has happened to me. Like, I'm going to raise the guilty. I've done this too. So we're going to talk about taking that one episode and spinning it into many pieces of content so you don't feel like you're bugging your audience and you don't feel like you're just constantly saying the same thing over and over and over again. Because I think it's really important to look at, how can I get in front of them? How can I be top of mind without saying the same thing over and over and over again? But again, it's important to remember that you have to figure out what is going to work for you. This isn't about you taking all these strategies and implementing them today. It's about, do I like to be on this one platform? Do I really want to create this type of content? Have that in the back of your mind as we explore these 20 different ways. But I want to tell you the 3 reasons why I love repurposing. 1, it makes content creation easier, like period, the end, or I guess exclamation point, the end. Like, it does. It makes everything so much easier. But I also know how I'm going to use the content before I ever record it. So go back to that Asana, like you saw all the different tasks and the projects and everything. If I do all that planning before I ever get started, I know what the end product is going to look like. And I can guarantee that it's going to be so much easier to get there if I do a lot of planning ahead. And then, of course, if I'm in front of my audience a lot more without having to do more work. Yeah, doesn't that sound good to everybody? Like, let me get in front of my people without being annoying and without having to do all these extra steps. So, why do you like the idea of repurposing? Please tell me in the chat. I'd love to share some of these in the Q&A whenever we get there. So put in the comments, why do you like the idea of repurposing your content? Tell us in the chat, and I'm going to be excited to read those here in a little bit when we get to the Q&A. All right, so now let's talk about starting with the end in mind. So again, we're talking about all the things that go into one podcast episode and not letting all that hard work go to waste. So we're going to talk about, what does repurposing success look like for you? And I'm actually going to share what this looks like for me, because starting with the end in mind really focuses on, well, I want this to be easier for me. I don't want to be behind the microphone 7 days a week and recording all this content. I don't want to be on camera 5 days a week when really I like to be in my sweats and have my hair up in a ponytail and not have makeup on. Like, can I get a amen for that? For sure. So we're about to get into the 20 ways to repurpose the episodes, but I can't reiterate enough that this of what success looks like for one content creator may be a total nightmare for someone else. So I don't want you to be afraid to test and experiment and pivot with your repurposing strategies as you try new things. So be thinking about how you want your content plan to look. Remember back at the very beginning, I showed you all, like, it's so organized and it just looks so easy to navigate. If that's what you're looking for, then you need to pick and choose the different pieces of content creation that are going to help you get there. All right. So I'm going to share with you what success looks like for me. So like I said, I don't have to record multiple things. I can do all the editing later. This is another thing about repurposing. If I record one piece of content once and I know I can use it in 5 different ways, then I can do all the editing at another time. But also, I always have a solid plan before I hit record. And I was actually telling Jared right before we started recording, I said, I spend about 40 to 50% of my content creation process planning. I do before I ever hit record. And that's simply because if I know what the end product is going to be with all this repurposing for social media, for all these different ways, then I know that everything is so much easier. I can show up with confidence. I feel better about creating this thing because I know it's not just going to be, I hope people listen to it this week. And then if they don't, oh, well, it falls flat and I can't do anything about it. We're not going to have that kind of attitude. I want you to feel prepared and I want you to feel confident in creating your content. So let's do this. Give me a let's do this in the comments if you are ready to get this show on the road. I know you're like, Krystal, you've been talking about like all this stuff, but let's get to the meat and potatoes of why we are here today. But I want to see, give me an amen. There's an amen. Give me a let's do this in the comments. Yeah, Sonia is excited. She says, let's do this. So if you're taking notes, this is the part where you want to pay attention. Like, scribble things down, but also remember, I told you I'm going to give you a link to grab all the slides from today. So if you're like, I just want to sit back and watch and relax, then that's fantastic too. But I just want you to know that this is where we are going to get started. Yes, let's do this. Let's do this. Y'all are excited. I love this. Okay. First and foremost, have broken up all these different ways that you can create content in different types of formats. So we have audio, we have video, we have text, we have presentation, and we have spin-off pieces of content. So first and foremost, referencing back to or using audio clips for other episodes is a great, easy way to get started with repurposing. Now, if you've ever heard the best of episodes, a lot of people do this at the end of the year. They're like, oh, here's the best of 2021. And they use small clips from different episodes. I also like that's great. That's fantastic. That's a really easy way. But I also like the idea of you create one episode and then you're like, you know what? I could have riffed off of this one piece of content for about 20 minutes, like just like a small 2-minute clip. Maybe you shared an idea or a story, or maybe your guest said something and you're like, oh, we'll have to talk about that another day. You could take that file and riff off of it and say, okay, we shared this in this one podcast episode. Now we're going to go deeper on it. Or maybe you had an interview and you're like, this is going to be a solo podcast. Now I can go even deeper into what I was talking about. So don't be afraid to take audio clips and reference back to them. Now, the second one, Clubhouse and Twitter Spaces. And now I know there's probably other audio rooms. I can't keep up with all the apps that are coming and going and all over the place, but I know that live audio rooms are something that people are really excited about. And I love the idea. This is going back to, we're taking a step back from just the actual final file, the audio file, and we're going to look at the planning. The planning that you did for that podcast episode, whether it was you and a guest or you and a solo episode, then you can take that same information and go live in an audio room. You could teach on something, or you could pull people up on stage and say, hey, what did you think about this conversation? I would love your thoughts. And this is fantastic for engagement. You could have people share it and join you in the conversation. Like I'm a marketing nerd. I didn't say that earlier. I'm a huge marketing nerd. So I love the idea of inviting people into the conversation so you can engage with your actual audience. Okay, the next one that we have is sharing content on other podcasts. This is going back to the concept of you've already planned the content, so why not use it on other podcast stages as well? And the idea behind this is, if like one of my goals this year, 2022, I'm putting it out in the universe, I want to guest on more podcasts. So what I could do is go back and look at my podcast downloads, my podcast stats, and say, what were my most popular episodes? And I could pick out 2 or 3 of them and say, well, what were the bullet points that I had? Or was that a great interview? Or did we really hit hard on like one particular topic? And then I could take that same information and pitch another podcast and say, hey, we had this fantastic reaction in my audience about this topic. I would love to come and share the same information on your show. So that's another thing to consider, is taking that information and sharing it across other podcasts. Number 4, clipping it down into smaller episodes. So I have my show. You probably saw it on the screen earlier. I have the Proffitt podcast, which comes out every Tuesday and Thursday. So it's twice a week. And it's typically a long form piece of content. It's anywhere between 25 minutes to 90 minutes long at times. And if I wanted to, I could clip it down into smaller episodes that I air on like a highlight reel on a different podcast. Now, this may sound like a lot, and I don't actually do this, but again, I'm giving you all these ideas. I've seen where really big shows will take smaller clips, and it's a totally separate podcast, but it's the same content. It's the highlight reel of their original show, and they're just feeding back traffic to their longer form piece of content, but people are still getting value if they only listen to the shorter episodes. So it's something to consider. I don't recommend this if you are a solopreneur, you're a solo podcaster, you don't have a team of people, because it would be a lot of work. But I like the idea of, again, repurposing something that you have already created. All right, now we are going into video content. Oh, I'm really excited about this one. I have lots of ideas for video content. First, we have to go with the obvious one, and that is audiograms or waveforms, sound bites, whatever term you want to use, but it's where you have a picture of your artwork or a picture of yourself as the host, and there's the squiggly line going across, right? Let's just break it down to what it is. It's an audio file on top of a a picture, and it's moving across the screen. Maybe you have captions if you're super fancy and you share that across social media. So when it comes to video content, don't just think of, gosh, I got to show up on camera or I have to record myself. No, that's not what it has to be. And if you're intimidated by going live on camera like I'm doing here, it's okay. You can baby step into it, or you don't have to do it at all. But I think that the easiest place to get started is the sound bites and the waveforms, the audiograms. So I think that it's really cool if you can tease out some of the highest points of an episode to your audience so they want to go listen to the entire thing. Pre-recorded YouTube videos. So give me a yes in the chat if you are a YouTuber or you want to be a YouTuber, because this has actually been a challenge for me along my journey. I do have a YouTube channel, and I tried recording, like looking into the camera and recording a podcast episode and having the mic right. And then be like, okay, I got to look at my notes, but no, I got to look at the camera and I got to do this. It's hard. It's hard, but it is doable. And so if you feel very comfortable on camera, think about how can I use like clips of me recording and share it out on YouTube. You could also do kind of like with the waveform that we were talking about, where you have the entire podcast episode uploaded on YouTube. There's a lot of different ways that you can do it. But if you feel comfortable on camera, I highly recommend planning, like you have the plan for that episode, go record a YouTube video and put it out to get more traffic to your podcast. Live streams. This is what we're doing right now. If you've never heard of a live stream, you don't know what that is, this is what we're doing. If you're watching us live or you're catching this on the replay, this is a live stream. And I like the idea of taking a podcast episode that either performed really well or you're really excited about the topic and sharing it with your audience. And you take that same outline and you share it out on a live stream. So this is another, like, I feel like it's a little bit more advanced, and live streaming can take a lot of practice, but it is totally doable. If I can get to the point where I can do this and I feel good about it, you can too, I promise. All right, so the next one is Instagram Reels and TikTok. So if you're already creating video content, you might as well use the power of social media to really get more people to see your content. And there's two specific ways I really like to use my Instagram to promote the podcast episode. So number one, I will use a video clip directly from an episode and share it out on Reels. Now, this could be me like, hey, I'm recording this podcast episode. Here's a behind the scenes of when I recorded it, and I'll do it on my phone. It's 60 seconds or less. But the second way, and this is what I actually tell all my clients and students and members of my community, is to let the episode air. And then whenever it goes live, say, hey, if you're interested in this topic, I'm holding my hand up like it's my phone. Can you tell that? Okay. I hope that was apparent. I don't even know where my phone is. It's somewhere around here, but I'm saying, hey, today's episode of the podcast was about X, Y, and Z. You should make sure and go listen to it. But you have to have that call to action that says, go listen to the podcast. Otherwise, they're probably just going to stay on TikTok or Instagram, and they may not follow you that way. But this is a really cool way to get a new audience to see your content. GIFs and memes. Don't discount these. I don't do these, but I have seen other people do these really, really well. And I think that they're a lot of fun. So you could take videos if you've done live streams or other types of videos, and you could turn them into GIFs or memes that are really fun for your community to share. I mean, how cool is it? Have you ever done this? We're on Instagram stories and you see a GIF of someone and you're like, oh, wait, that's Melody. I know her. Or that's Elise. Hey, I've seen her before. Like, it's the funnest thing, but it's not something I do on a regular basis. But I don't discount any of these ideas, because if this is your specialty, you're comfortable doing these types of things, please explore them, try them, and then come back and tell us what your results were. All right, a TV pitch. So have you ever thought about being on TV? I've actually taken concepts from previous podcast episodes and I've laid them out to pitch some local, I live in the Houston area, and I've actually done some TV pitches around here. I was on TV last year talking about podcasting, and it was a lot of fun. And I wasn't reinventing the wheel, y'all. I used the same information that worked really well on a podcast episode, and I knew it would work for this particular audience. And so I used that information for this TV pitch. I hope that y'all are with me. I hope that y'all are inspired by all this, because this is stuff I wish I would have known whenever I first got started creating content, because remember, going back to what I said earlier, it makes things easier, so much easier. All right, we're getting into text, and I'm going to kind of go through these faster because transcriptions, this is what we're starting with. Taking an audio file, transcribing it, turning it into captions. This can be used so many different ways, but this is the foundation of what these next ones will be focused on. It's having that initial transcription created. So you can use these for blog post and show notes. I'm not a fan of just putting the transcriptions up on a blog post or a page, but you could format it into an article. And hey, you're not working from scratch. If you have a transcript, you can fix it, use something like Grammarly. This is one of my favorite tools. It helps me be It helps me look like I'm a better writer. I was going to say it helps me become a better writer. It makes me look like a better writer because I use tools like this to help me format and formulate show notes for my podcast and blog posts that I can put on my website. Emails. Emails make people cringe up a little bit, but you could take the information that are like the key points in the planning that you did of your episode or your transcription again and format them into a way that your emails are readable and it's something that your audience would be excited about, or just clips. Like take a few quotes and say, hey, these were some of the highlights from this episode. Make sure you go listen to it here. I love email marketing. I think it's totally underrated and people don't pay enough attention to it. So emails are something I get really excited about too. Quotes for social media. Again, just like with the waveforms and the sound bites, I think if you use little quote cards that are the big takeaways from the episode, people say, well, it's giving away the main thing. It's actually not. It's getting people excited. It's the cliffhanger that makes them want to go listen to the rest of the episode. So do not underestimate quote cards for social media. And then carousel post, it's kind of the same thing. This is when you have several images that you can swipe through, whether they're pictures or quotes, and you can see like, oh, these were the 4 or 5 takeaways, and you can swipe through them. So social media experts, like they could go on so many other tangents on how you could use these, but these are, again, just some ideas to kind of get the creative juices flowing. All right, articles for publications, just like with the TV pitch and pitching to be a guest on someone else's podcast, you could take that popular information, the popular episodes that you've had, and turn it into a pitch to be in a magazine, be on a popular blog. They're like the sky's the limit when it comes to how you want to use that content. But I think it's really smart to, again, reuse it. Don't just let it be like, oh, that was such a great podcast. Look, we got thousands of downloads. It's amazing. Well, how can you reuse that? How can you repurpose that into something else and give it more life? Get the most mileage out of it. Okay, we're getting into the last few ones. So if you have any questions, make sure you put them in the chat, put a Q in front of them. But number 17 is create a webinar or a workshop style training. Now, I don't know how many of you here have a business that's based around your podcast, or you want to have a business based around your podcast, but I love the idea of teaching some of the content that is performing really well. This could be free, it could be paid, it could be $7, it could be $700. I don't know what everybody's particular business would look like. And it is going to depend on your audience and the type of content that you're creating. But I wanted to throw this out there for someone that's maybe never considered this before. And then creating a product. So we just talked about an actual presentation. Now this would be more of something that's like a freebie, like a free resource, a lead magnet to get people on your email list. You could take that transcription, again, this all kind of starts with the transcription, and format it into a nice PDF. I love Canva. I use it all the time. And it could either be free or something that's paid. All right, here we go. Final 2. You could create something new from the ideas and inspiration and feedback that you get from your audience. So I teach something called ask and then listen. This is where you ask your audience what they loved about a particular episode. Y'all, if you have a podcast episode that is performing so well and you don't know why, ask your audience, because maybe they'll tell you, oh, well, you went on a tangent about something I had no idea about, or you shared a story I'd never heard before. We want to hear more content like that. So ask your audience what they love about it and then listen. Actually listen to what they have to say. And I could go off on how you could survey your audience and all those things, but we don't have time for that today. So I hope that you're encouraged to ask your audience for that feedback. And then the last one, number 20, is creating creative social posts. Now, I'm not a social media expert. I don't know everything there is to know about Twitter and Twitch and Pinterest and all the other ones. There's probably 17 other ones I don't even know about that you're an expert in. But I don't want to discount the fact that you can take images, audio, text, all of these different repurposing strategies and cobble together something that is going to work for you. Remember, that's what we're talking about. Taking ideas that will work for you, your content, and your audience is what is most important and what I hope you walk away from this training today with. Okay, so we're here. We're here. We're at the Q&A. I'm like, I hope we did this in record speed, record amount of time. But I want everybody to go to krystalproffitt.com/PMU for Podcast Movement University. And you're going to get all the slides. Because I know I went super fast. I'm like, I'm about to pass out over here, Jared. I was talking really fast. Oh, hang on. I can't hear you. Are you muted?
Oh, I was muted.
There we
And
go.
yeah, don't pass out is what I said. So this is from Sarah. What software are you using for the transcription?
Okay, this is great. I know that there's a lot of tools out there. The specific one that I use is otter.ai. So OTTER.ai. It's the one that I've used for probably the last 3 years, and I really like it. I know there's a lot of other ones out there, but that's the one that I've been using. Great question.
That is a great question. And then, of course, we've got, which edit program do you use?
Oh, okay. So I'm going to share a lot of my tools because I don't know which editing software in particular you're talking about. So I use Hindenburg Journalist for my podcast. And then for video editing, I use Camtasia. And this is something I've done Adobe Premiere. It's very, very custom, very complex. And it's amazing for people that want to do really super fancy things. It's too fancy for me. It overwhelmed me. So I like to stick to very simple programs. For my podcast, I started with Audacity. And then I graduated about 2 years into my journey to Hindenburg Journalist, and that's what I use now. So great question. And then for all my like graphics, PDFs, even this presentation today, I use Canva. So yeah, great question.
Yes, you did use Canva, which I love. Let's keep going here. Oh, here's a fun one. This is from Sonia. Do you have to have a blog for your podcast?
This is really good. So Sonia, I love this question because I get this a lot in my community where people are very hesitant about starting a blog because it feels overwhelming. It feels like too much. And here's what I have to say about that. I love a blog for organic reach. So if you don't have a ton of money to pay for ads or to, really hire someone for your team to do all this marketing and promotion, what having a blog can help you do is get some of that organic SEO juice from Google and all these other places that can help your show and your topic, the things that you're talking about, get discovered organically. So this is why I love a blog, but it's really more for the long run. Having a blog, like just starting one tonight and having it published tomorrow, it's not going to do anything. But having it for the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, and you're continuously putting out content will help you rank on Google, rank on the different search engines, and get your content in front of other people. So that's why I like it. You don't have to do it. So let me just give you that permission right now for anybody that wants it.
Well said. Okay, so we have a fun question. What type of planning do you do for content when you are an interview-based show?
Oh, yeah, this is great. So here's what I will do. When it comes to the guest, I'm very choosy. I'm very selective on the guests that I have on my show. So I always make sure that they are aligned with my topic and my audience. Because if they can't bring something to the show that's really going to get people excited or drive traffic, like I can't have people that are just self-promotional. I'm sorry to say that. I'm calling these people out right now, but you can't just be self-promotional. You got to serve the audience of the show that you're going on. So the planning really happens in the keywords, like how I will title the podcast, as well as how I want the conversation to go. So if I know, well, if I have a conversation with someone that's an expert in this topic, I want to make sure that I have the SEO keywords, the titles, and the information that I would put in the show notes that are centered around what this person is an expert in, because maybe I'd be more likely to rank on Google for this particular topic. So I hope that makes sense, but really it's just a matter of making sure you're really focused on one topic. That's the type of planning that I would do. Okay.
How do you keep track of all the data points you learned along the way that could be used or repurposed later?
This is let me take a deep breath. this is frustrating because it's complicated. It's not as straightforward, like, oh, I just know immediately that I put this thing out and it worked and everything was, I can just sit back, kick my feet up, and everything worked perfectly. It's not how it works. But what I do is I really have to prioritize what's my number one piece of content. What is the thing that absolutely has to go out? And for me, it's my podcast and my YouTube content. If nothing else went out this week, it would be those two things, not all the other repurposing things. And the reason why is because those are the things I can measure. So don't worry so much about like, oh, did this, I put this same piece of content on Instagram and it didn't perform well, but I put it on LinkedIn and man, people just ate it up. They loved it so much. So you kind of just have to play with where you're putting your repurpose content out and pay attention. I can't say it enough. Just pay attention to what's happening. And that would be kind of the baseline, like get a baseline for how your content is performing now as you implement new strategies. And I would say give it about 30 to 90 days to go back and measure. Did anything change? Should I try something else? Should I experiment? Like do something different? So that would be my advice.
Okay, here's another good one here. This is from James. For every hour of a recording, how much additional time do you spend editing, creating new content?
Okay, so I'm going to answer the first part of this first. And Jared, I don't know how you're going to feel about this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I don't do a lot of editing.
Let's change the question. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
I don't do a lot of editing. I really don't. And the reason why I don't do a lot of editing on my podcast is, like I said earlier, I spend 40 to 50% of my content creation time planning. So by the time I'm sitting behind my mic to actually record, I've already like said it out loud to myself. I have really like gone through and fleshed out, this is the entire bullet points that I want to have. This is what I want to talk about. Here's like, I know I want to tell this story. I want to focus on this, or I want to ask these specific questions to my guest. I spend so much time planning that I don't spend a lot of extra time editing. So that's the first part of my podcast. But when it comes to creating new pieces of content, it just depends, because I've done live streams where I know in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do a training in this live stream and my podcast audience would love this. So I'm just going to strip the audio out. I don't care if there's people asking questions, or maybe I could go in and cut a few pieces out, but I've gotten to the point where editing isn't as much of like a heavy burden, and you will get there. I don't know where you are in your journey, James, and I hope that editing isn't something that stresses you out, but it is a learning curve, and it does get better over time for sure.
Okie dokie. We got some more if you're willing, Krystal.
I'm here.
Okay,
yes.
Let's keep going. Everyone seems to be using Zoom to create a podcast. What do you think?
Yeah, well, it's funny because Jared, he's gonna have to come back on because he's got a Squadcast t-shirt, and
I do like Squadcast.
I'm like, this is actually what I use. So shout out to Zach and Rock and the team over at Squadcast. This is what I use to record my podcast. But if you are just getting started and you feel very comfortable with Zoom, that's where I tell people to start. Like, start with whatever you know and you're comfortable with, but also where your guest is comfortable, because I'm in this space. I do stuff with online business owners, people that are like, oh yeah, sure, I know what Squadcast is. But if you feel like it's going to intimidate your guest, if you do a lot of interviews, stick with Zoom. Just use Zoom and you could absolutely create a really high quality podcast. It's going to matter more about the environment that you record in to get that really high quality audio from you and your guest. So great question.
Sonia has a follow-up question about the blog. Is the blog to build out from each of the episodes to put more detail into each episode?
Yeah. So, Sonia, I would love for you to go over to my YouTube channel. I just recently did an entire, like it's a long training. So fair warning. It's like a 30-minute video of how, like, from beginning to end, I create my show notes as a blog, because I will take again, I use Asana. I have like a detailed outline of an episode before I record. I use that outline, then I record, and then I use a transcript. So I'm not starting from scratch. Like, I don't ever want you to think that you have to create a I'm the person, if I'm staring at a Google Doc and the cursor is blinking in my face, I'm like, you're just taunting me. You're joking with me right now. I can't start a lot of things from scratch. So I don't. I use the plans that I used to record. I use the transcripts, and then I like go above and beyond. That's really how I think of show notes is I add other podcast episodes. I could link to this podcast movement training. I could share the YouTube video right there in the blog post because it's that above and beyond. It's additional resources to help people. So yeah, it's the above and beyond that you go like the extra mile for your audience.
Kim wants to know, how important is the equipment you use?
So I've had everything. You can't see it. It's on the other side of this hang on, I'm going to move. I want you to see this because there is this little microphone right here. This is a $20 microphone. I got off Amazon when I first started back in 2018 and it was $20. It worked beautifully. I've had a super expensive microphone and it didn't work that great because of the environment that I was in. So while I think equipment is important and I always tell podcasters to get a dynamic mic if you have a space that's echoey. I actually have tile floors. I have like glass doors over here. I have windows right here. So there's a lot of echo in this space, but my dynamic microphone doesn't pick all that extra noise up. So if you are going to spend a little bit of money on equipment, get a dynamic mic. But I think that the environment where you record is just as important. So if you have a lot of echo, consider going in a closet or somewhere else that has more furniture or curtains or somewhere where it kind of deadens the sound.
And you more or less touched on this, but let's just go ahead. Favorite microphone?
Yeah. So I have a Rode Procaster. This is what I have right here. I did not start with this one. I started with my $20 microphone. This is a few years in. So I never recommend this microphone to someone that's just getting started, but it is my favorite. I've had many. It's my favorite.
And then speaking of microphones, what mic can I use if I want to record while I'm traveling?
Oh, this is so good. Hi, Monique. She's part of our community. So happy that you're here. So if you're traveling, this is where things can get interesting. I've recorded in my car. I've recorded in my minivan while my son was in his orthodontist appointment. And I have a portable recorder, which if you wanted to invest in, it's a Tascam recorder. But again, this is what I do. I talk about podcasting. I talk about content creation. You don't have to do that. You could just use your AirPods and record on your phone and not even a fancy app. You could use the Voice Memos app on your phone or another similar app. You could do something where you plug in, if you have like headphones with a microphone, you could record on that as well. But I think that the idea, again, is the type of environment that you want to record in and what kind of ambiance you want to have. I've recorded actually by the ocean. I was at the ocean like I guess 6 months ago and I was like, oh, it'd be fun just to record, have that ambience in the background because I knew my audience would like that. But you have to just consider, is your audience going to like that? Or if they hear road noise because you're driving down the car or driving down the road, somebody else is driving down the road. Hang on, let's put that out there. That seems like a safer option. Somebody else is driving and you're recording on your phone, then is your audience going to like that? Because that's going to be something that would be hard to edit out later. So those are a few things to consider. But yeah, great question.
It is. Robert wants to know, what tips do you have for community building?
Great question. There are a lot of different ways, Robert. I would first establish, where do you want to hang out with your community? Because I could tell you all my tips and tricks, but if you're like, I could tell you how to build a Facebook group, but if you're like, I do not like Facebook, I don't want to be on Facebook, then no, all that information really wouldn't work out for you. But what I really like is the idea that people have somewhere to go every week. So if you are telling people, hey, meet me, I have a community in my live stream. Like I do a weekly live stream. I have people like Monique, like so happy. I see some other people in the comments that said, I'm here from Krystal's community. They will join me on my live stream every week at the same time. So establishing that consistency of where people need to go. What do you want them to do? Do you want them to show up live and engage with you? Do you want them to watch the replay? Do you want them to come into a Facebook group if that's where you decide and share their questions or their concerns or their comments? But I think that consistency is the biggest thing. If you're not showing up on a consistent basis to grow and nurture and engage with that community, then it's not likely going to happen as quick as you'd like it to. Great question.
Okay, for B2B podcasters, what is the most effective way to market their podcast?
Oh, get on other podcasts. This is still like the tried and true way that if you are trying to market your own show, getting on other podcasts it's just the most effective strategy. And here's why. The people that are listening to you as a guest on someone else's show already likes podcasts. They already listen to podcasts, and it's likely that the shows that you want to get on have a similar audience. And I don't know about everybody here, like your podcast listening habits, but I'm not podcast agnostic where I'm just like, nope, I can't listen to any more podcasts. I can only listen to one or two, and then that's it. I can't listen to all of them. Now, I get excited when people tell me, hey, I got a new marketing podcast you got to check out. I'm obsessed with podcasts about TV shows that I love. So I found out there was a Yellowstone podcast, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I have to go listen to this. And I found out there was another one about another show that I love, and I will go listen to them. So you have to think about the end user, the consumer who is your podcast listener or potential podcast listener. What are their habits already? They already love shows. So listening to your show isn't that much of an ask. It's just going to their podcast player and clicking a subscribe button and starting to play all of your episodes too. So that's a fantastic question. So anybody that's wanting to grow their show, and it's not just for B2B podcasters, for any type of show, getting on other podcasts is a great way to grow, which is why it's one of my goals for this year too.
Good goal. This is from Jerry, and I'm a fan of Jerry, so I'm excited that he asked a question. What would you say is your podcasting obsession? What aspect of podcasting do you seem to think about 24/7? Mics, software, process?
Oh,
What
this is
say
so
you,
good.
Krystal?
This is so good. So thank you for this question, Jerry. My favorite thing is content. It's content. This is the thing that back in the day, whenever I first started helping people with their podcast, so many people were focusing on editing and software and equipment and all these fancy things that I'm just gonna be really honest, I had no interest in. I was like, well, I got my $20 mic. I figured out Audacity. Why do I need anything extra special? How can I make this extra special without me stressing myself out about learning all these fancy editing techniques? And it was content. And it is why I was asked here today by Jared and his team, is because I've figured out ways to repurpose content and use it in so many different ways. And it continues to be the thing. I read books about content creation. I study marketing. It's what lights me up so much. So I guess if you were to boil everything down to one thing, it'd be marketing. I geek out about marketing. I love it so much.
Rightfully so. Another wonderful question. Do you use Canva to preload your programs to go out on different platforms?
I do not. So I know that Canva has like a scheduling tool for you to, I'm assuming that's what you're referencing. Like you can hook up all your different accounts and you can schedule things to go out. But I'm a manual process person because I have had automation tools break on me and I don't know about them breaking. Maybe one day I'll get to the point where I just totally trust in all the systems that I have. Maybe I have trust issues with technology, but I do not. I have something where I will download Canva. And here's a pro tip for anybody wanting to know social media a little bit better. I use the scheduling tool that's built into the creator studio of Facebook. So if you have a Facebook page, an Instagram business page, then you can actually use the creator tools within Facebook. It's the Facebook business creator tools. And that's where I schedule everything. So I do use a scheduling tool, but I use the one that's native to Facebook and Instagram, I guess, Meta, whatever you want to call it.
Okay. Do you share your Asana tasks as a template? It's beautiful.
Oh, no, I don't. That's something that has been iterated on. I can't even tell you how many times. It's been like a year in the making. And here's what I did. I can just tell you very plainly. I think I have it. No, I don't have it right here. But what I did is I do this every year in December. I printed out a year calendar where it's like blank. It just says, January, February, and it has like boxes for all the days of the month. And I will literally physically write in with a pen and I say, okay, this is when a podcast episode airs. This is when a YouTube video comes out. This is when I want to email my list. And then I did it all. It was a very manual process. It took me a few hours. And then I put that into Asana. And now I do have my own version of a template where I don't have to duplicate it every time. But it's a manual process up front, but oh my gosh, that's the only reason why it looks as beautiful and organized as it does, is because I took time and it makes my life so much easier. So much easier. So it's a lot of work up front, totally worth it. Absolutely worth it.
What is the link to the blog posting workshop?
I don't know what this is. Do you know what that is?
I don't. Okay. Next question. Is Asana as confusing as Trello?
Oh no. So I used Trello back in the day. I prefer Asana, and maybe Trello has updated. I haven't used it in a few years, but what I like about Asana is the fact that there's different views. So like I was just giving you the example about having a calendar. There's a calendar view. So if I wanted to go in and say, hey, every Tuesday I'm going to air a podcast episode, I could literally write podcast episode on this Tuesday and then go down in the calendar and podcast episode. But then I could switch to a different view and it would have a list of everything that I just did. So there's a list view, there's a calendar view, and then there's a Trello, like a Kanban style board view where you can see it that way. So that's why I personally really like Asana, is you have the different options to look at everything. And it's free. I use the free version. Everyone's like, oh, it must be the paid upgrade. No, I use the free version. So it's absolutely doable.
No shame in free.
No.
Krystal, we are grateful for your time today. Thank you so much. We mentioned crystalproffitt.com, which you have on the screen there. People can go there to learn more about you. They can go to crystalproffitt.com/PMU to get your slides, which they should. And then we're going to have this available in the university as well, which is free to join, so everybody can review it as well. And Krystal, do you have any final thoughts for all these wonderful people that have hung around to learn about how to repurpose? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say thank y'all so much. This was so fun. I thank you for your questions. Thanks y'all for participating in the chat. It always makes it that much more fun when y'all are excited about the topic. If you have any other follow-up questions, make sure that you can post them on the video after it's live, and I will try to follow up with as many as I can. But I'm just grateful that you're excited about trying new things. Don't feel overwhelmed that you have to try all these new things. There's a saying that we share in our community all the time, and that is, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere. And I believe this to be true in whatever endeavors you encounter. So Jared and the team, thank y'all so much for having me today. This was so much fun.
And Krystal, just so you know, I'm going to try recording by the beach. You inspired me. So.
Yes, please. And then send it to us. Let us all know.
So let everyone hear it.
Yeah.
All right, Krystal, thank you again. And thanks to everyone. And look forward to seeing everybody next week. Cheers.